meeting of 30. Can everyone on Zoom hear me? Nods,
Yes.
thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay. Good. All right. Thank you. All right, let's, Andy, would you take us through roll call, please?
Dan Justice, Earl Bolander. Here. Amanda Jeschke.
Here.
Rick Jacobs. Here. Nathan Sturdevant. Here.
All right, thank you. Board members, please make sure your mics are on when you, just a little house cleaning there. Would everyone please rise for the pledge? I pledge. All right, next on our agenda is to approve tonight's meeting agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Looks like we have two sets of meeting minutes from November and the December special meeting to approve. So we'll do this one at a time. Have the board had an opportunity to look over these, and do we have any additions or corrections? Okay, so then let's do one at a time. I'm looking for a motion to approve the November 30th regular meeting minutes.
I move to approve the November 30th meeting minutes.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that one passes. Let's move on then to the December 7th special meeting.
I'll move to approve the December 7th minutes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that brings us to our new business. We have two cases tonight. The first case is variance, my glasses on so I can actually see it, 2023, and this is 322 West Broadway Street. It's the Huck's expansion variances. So Adam, could you take us through the presentation, please?
Sure. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklikowski, the Planning and Building Director for the town of Fortville. Excuse me. All right. The first case before you tonight involves a proposed expansion to the Huck's gas station, and they are seeking use and development standards variances. So this particular project is on the west side of Walnut Street and it's south of Broadway Street. And the owner and petitioner on the case is Martin and Bailey Inc., and they're doing business as Huck's Gas Station. The zoning on the property is residential 3.5, and there is a pending rezone to commercial community. And the property today is presently used as a single-family residential property, or the side yard of it. So the request is that Huck's would like to expand their convenience store and parking lot. And in order to do so as desired, the following requires approval by the BZA. The first item is a use variance, which would be to allow expansion of a gas station use on a property within the Old Town overlay. And then secondly is a development standards variance to allow expansion of the store southward rather than towards Broadway or the Walnut Street frontages. For your background information, for the rezoning, approximately a third of an acre from R3.5 to CC is underway to accommodate the proposed expansion of the store and the parking lot. And again, that would involve the west side of Walnut Street, south of Broadway. Huck's is purchasing all of 426 Walnut Street. The home would remain and would be resold. And the area to be rezoned is a portion of the lot for the expansion. A lot line adjustment or a replat would be done. Council had first reading of the ordinance on December 18th. And the Plan Commission rendered a positive recommendation on December 26th. So considering these variance requests at this time allows for expedited processing of the project. So if we take a look at the aerial photo from Beacon, you can see the area that would be rezoned and really the subject area of this use and development standards variance request. If we take a look at the oblique aerial, you can see the existing gas station and the existing home to the south at 426 Walnut. And of course, we can always refer back to these exhibits. If we take a look at the zoning, you can see the area that would be rezoned to CC. Everything in beige is residential 3.5, and then the red area is commercial community. And here are some current ground photos of the area. You can see the current convenience store. You can see the area in which they'd like to expand. Then you can see a zoomed in photo of the existing home. And if we take a look at this rezone exhibit, you can see where the split is of the current commercial zoning and the current residential zoning, what would be proposed to be CC, and a basic outline of what they'd like to do in terms of the site layout and the building expansion. And then here, for your understanding, you can see the possible elevations of what they're looking to accomplish on the remodel of the store. In terms of the community response, all the public hearing requirements have been met that involved a sign posting, a mailing to nearby property owners, and a newspaper legal ad publication in the Greenfield Reporter. And there's no known remonstrance at this time. So in going through this, the first item is that use variance. As I mentioned, that would allow expansion of a prohibited gas station use within the Old Town overlay. And if we go through the decision criteria for use variances, which is based on Indiana code, we'll go through each of these. First one is that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. I'd say yes, that's been met. There's no evidence to suggest that allowing a modest expansion of an existing gas station would impact those items. The second test is that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. I'd say yes, that's been met. There's no evidence to suggest that an improved store and a modest parking lot expansion would negatively impact adjacent properties. Third item is the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property involved. I'd say yes, that's been met. This is an existing gas station, not a new one, and they are looking to do a thorough renovation and a modest expansion as part of it. Just gotta fix one thing on the computer here. All right, the fourth item is the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought. I'd say yes, that's been met. The company would possibly not invest in needed aesthetic improvements to the store unless it can be modestly expanded. And then the last item for the use variance would be that the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan adopted. I'd say yes, that's been met. The 2016 comprehensive plan map shows the expanded property as commercial and its use is consistent with this designation. So with that, my recommendation would be to approve the use variance subject to town council approval of the associated rezone, of course. And then the second part of this are the development standards variances. The provision in the code in the Broadway Main portion of the zoning ordinance would state that building expansion towards Broadway or Walnut would be required to create a more urban streetscape. So in this case, they're expanding the building southward. So again, if we go through similar criteria, though these are specific to development standards variances, we'll run through these. The first one is that general welfare test. I'd say yes, that's been met. Again, no evidence to suggest that allowing a modest expansion of an existing gas station southward would impact these items. The second item on the adjacent property test, again, I'd say yes, that's been met. No evidence to suggest that an improved store and a modest parking lot expansion would negatively impact those adjacent properties. And then for these development standard variances, there's just a third item, practical difficulty, that the strict application of the terms of this chapter of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty in the use of the property. And I'd say, yes, that's been met. The company, again, as stated before, would possibly not invest in needed aesthetic improvements to the store unless it can be modestly expanded. And additionally, parking is at a premium on the site, and expanding the store either towards Broadway or Walnut would result in less parking in the front or the side of the store. And of course, this is an existing facility. So like the last one, my recommendation would be to approve it subject to town council approval of the associated rezone. So with that, if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to address those. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Does anyone from our board have any clarification questions for Adam at this time?
Yeah, I do, Adam. If you could pull up that photo that showed the photo of the back area. Yeah, right there. Okay. Are those trees going to remain, or are they going to come down?
No, presumably those would be removed
Okay.
because the house would remain. There would be a 6-foot side yard setback, which is the minimum that's allowed in the zone, in the R3.5 zoning district. And then they would put up a fence and landscaping east of that area. It'd be about a 10-foot wide area of landscape. And then as for parking lot lighting, that hasn't been completely determined yet, but I wouldn't anticipate there being any parking lot lighting. That's something that we evaluate as part of the site plan that goes to the Plan Commission probably next month. I think they would probably just do lighting on the back of the building that would point downward and be fully shielded.
Okay. And will that house be used when it's resold? Will it be used as a residential or commercial?
At this point in time, it would be since the zoning would stay residential, it would be sold as a residential home. If somebody wanted to, say, convert it to an office, that could possibly be done. They could either get it rezoned to a commercial zoning, or they could possibly seek a use variance to do that. So remains to be seen at this point.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else here on the board?
Yeah, Adam, does the use variance allowing the gas station in the overlay, does that include all aspects? As we've noted before, this gas station's a grandfathered in, right? And there are some aspects of the gas station, like the LED signage, that would not conform. Are we green lighting that to remain? Does the entire property then, can it be developed without?
Or do they have to start from scratch?
Well, anytime we're dealing with a remodel situation, and if I recall correctly, it even says in the ordinance that we should always use our best efforts to try to any of the new things that they're putting on the property to try to bring everything into compliance as much as reasonably possible. So, for example, one thing that wouldn't be reasonable in my view would be to say, move the convenience store to the hard corner and put the gas station in the back. That would meet the ordinance perfectly, but obviously, that would be unusual in this particular setting for an existing gas station. So,
Sure.
but if we're able to get pedestrian improvements, landscaping, aesthetic enhancements, lighting across the board, those are all things that are usually considered to be within reason and should be able to address a lot of those items.
Okay.
All right, I have a question, and this might be a little premature. Are they tearing down the existing building and rebuilding further back, or are they just adding on to this? I guess, and maybe, like I said, this might be a little premature to answer that. Because when you had your little sketch up that
Yeah.
had the pink stripes on it.
Yeah, my understanding is, and Hux can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they just basically be reskinning the building and adding on to the back of it.
Okay. Well, hold on, we'll have room in the agenda for that here in a second. Okay, is there anybody else here on the board that has any questions? All right, now I have time for the petitioner to come up. If you'll come up and say and spell your name and how you represent this case.
Darren Helms, Landmark Surveying, and I'm here on behalf of Huck's. I'm their engineer and site designer. And so I was wanting to answer your question directly.
Sure.
They're just expanding the back of the building. The store that's there will remain, and they'll expand about 13 feet on the rear of the building. And they're just going to remodel the exterior and interior of the building. But this building that you see now will stay there, just added on to slightly on the rear.
Okay, is there anything else you want to add past Adam's presentation?
I can just add a little bit to
Sure.
kind of help you understand what they're doing. They will be adding a landscape strip on the rear in the parking. They want to, expand the back of the building a little, add 7 spaces for parking on the rear and move the trash dumpster to the rear to kind of get it out from the side of the building to allow a little easier movement of traffic around the building. And they're also going to be removing the part of the canopy, the walkway that goes from the T portion of the canopy, from the canopy to the building, that will be removed. And they'll be upgrading the canopy also. So it's not only just the building upgrade, but they'll upgrade the canopy also. So they just want to remodel the store. It's been there 26, 27 years and it's dated. And so they're wanting to upgrade it, make it look nicer.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any clarification questions? Okay, well, you can have a seat, just don't go too far because we'll probably call you back up for some additional questions. All right, I have time now for public response. This would be for, against, comments or questions. If there's anybody here tonight that would like to speak, or if we have anybody on Zoom that would like to speak. All right, I'm not getting any takers. So let's go to government officials. Do we have any government officials tonight? And I see a shaking of a no. Okay. Do we have any other questions for our petitioner before we go to a vote? Oh, wait a minute. Sure. If you will say and spell your name and how you, not how you, I'm sorry, just say and spell your name, please.
Mark Dudley, Remax Realty Group in Greenfield. I've sold real estate in the county for some time. And I think 2 things to point out. I think the enhancement of the commercial that's already there, if you look at those renderings, it will be much more attractive, both from the street side and from the residential side. And I do not think that the improvements and addition that they're going to do will negatively impact the residential neighborhood to the south. I mean, it's a great area and it's going to remain that way in my opinion, so.
All right. All right, thank you. Okay, let's see here. Any last questions for Adam from the board? All right. Well, I think we can possibly do this in one motion. I'm looking for a motion to approve the use variance for a gas station in Old Town and also the variance for the development standards, which is the expansion away from Broadway rather than towards Broadway. And this probably should include either a subject to or conditions if we have any.
I'll make a motion to approve variance 15/2023, 322 West Broadway Street for a use variance to allow expansion of the gas station use within the Old Town overlay, as well as a development standards variance to allow expansion of the convenience store southward instead of toward Broadway or Walnut Street, subject to the rezone by the town council.
All right, I'm going to open this up for any discussion from the board. Okay, then do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations, motion carries. Give us 1 second to do our paperwork and then we will move on to our second case. You're welcome, thank you. When we're done with that, let's just pass these down then. I also put the meeting minutes in there as well, so. All right, the second case up tonight is case number variant 16/2023. It's at 9737 North Fortville Pike. Marmion property variances. Adam, can you take us through the presentation, please?
All right, for the second case tonight, this involves a project at 9737 North Fortville Pike, and the owner and petitioner is Clay Marmion. The zoning on the property is residential 3.5, and there's a pending rezone to residential rural. And the property is currently being used as a single-family residential or a rural estate. And the request here tonight is that Mr. Marmion would like to construct a pole barn on his property. And in order to do so as desired, the following variances are needed. Number one, a use variance to allow a metal pole barn on property zoned residential 3.5. And then secondly, some development standards variances, which I'll spell out, but they're various. They're related to location, size, and architectural requirements. So again, some background info on this project. As I mentioned, for the rezoning and going from R3.5 to rural residential, there is a mismatch in the current zoning versus the use of the property. And the property owner would like to have the ability in the future to have horses on the property. Council had first reading of the ordinance on December 18th. And due to a public hearing noticing issue, the rezone was bumped to the Plan Commission meeting in January 2024. So considering these variances, request at this time does allow for some expedited processing of the project. And if we take a look at the aerial photo, granted this is from 2021 on Beacon, you can see the area in yellow where the property sits. And if we take a look at the bird's eye image, this was from November of this year, you can see the home on the property that's there today. If we take a look at the zoning map, you can see that there's R3.5 zoning for the most part to the north, to the south, to the west, and then there's unincorporated county zoning R1.0 to the east. And if we take a look at the exhibit that was submitted by the petitioner, you can see the general location of where the pole barn would be located. It's kind of in the northwest corner of the front of the site. And this is a screenshot of the type of structure that he would like to do from VersaTube. In terms of the community response on this request, again, all the public hearing requirements have been met, which involve the sign posting, mailing to nearby property owners, and newspaper publication, the Greenfield Reporter. No known remonstrance at this time on this case. As mentioned, the first thing we'll look at is the use variance, which would be to allow a metal pole barn on property zoned R3.5. So the first item is the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. I'd say yes, that's been met. Allowing a metal pole barn on this particular property would not impact those items. And note, the property functions as a rural residential property in which a metal pole barn is allowed if zoned properly. However, the zoning happens to be R3.5, and as I mentioned, a rezone is currently in process. Second one is the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. I'd say yes, that's been met. There's no reason to believe that a metal pole barn on this rural estate property would diminish adjacent property values. Third item, the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property involved. Yes, that's been met, I think. As mentioned, the zoning is a mismatch with the use of the property. Fourth is that the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship. I'd say yes, that's been met. Allowing this structure for additional storage is practical and reasonable, and prohibiting the structure in which no complaints have been received would be an unnecessary hardship. And then lastly, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan adopted. I'd say yes, that's been met, no substantial interference. The 2016 comprehensive plan map shows this property as industrial, and this was a precursor to the South Madison master plan. The property was purchased by Mr. Marmion in 2020, and he subsequently built a home on the property. He has stated in the past that he is amenable to selling right-of-way for South Madison Boulevard, and the home was located on the lot with that in mind. So based on that, my recommendation would be to approve the use variances. And then moving on to the development standards variances. There are 5 of them here. The first one, the ordinance states that accessory structures shall be placed a minimum of 15 feet behind the front plane of the primary structure. Second one is that the accessory structure shall be no larger than 50% of the area of the primary structure. The proposed structure is 1,680 square feet and the house is 3,156 square feet. Therefore, the garage could not exceed 1,578 square feet. Third item is 9-inch roof overhangs would be required. Fourth item is a minimum of a 6 to 12 roof pitch would be required. And then the fifth one would be a paved driveway would be required. So again, the decision criteria for the development standards variances. First, on the general welfare test, I'd say yes, that's been met. Again, allowing this type of a building in this area would not impact those items. Second one, pertaining to the development standards variances, involves adjacent property, and I'd say yes, that's been met. There's no evidence to suggest that these items would be affected by allowing deviation from the architectural and design standards in this case. Most importantly, we are unaware of any remonstrance to this proposal from the neighbors. And then lastly, in terms of practical difficulty, that test, I'd say yes, that's been met. Allowing this structure for additional storage is practical and reasonable. Prohibiting the structure in which no complaints have been received would be an unnecessary hardship. And additionally, the area in which the building would sit is barely visible from the roadway anyway. So with that, my recommendation would be to approve the development standards variances as well. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to address them. And Mr. Marmion is on the line, the Zoom line.
All right, thank you, Adam. Can you quickly go over again the development standards? One was that the accessory structure will be in front of the primary residence, that the size of the building was slightly over the 50% allowed of the house. And then the other one was the architectural details, which were overhangs. And what were the other? There we go, the 612 pitch and paved drive. And what? Let's see, 50%. All right, does anybody here from the board have any questions?
So would the size of the building then need to be reduced by 102 square feet, or?
Correct. If you
To make it
decided
fit.
not to grant that particular variance, which you don't have to grant all of them if you wish. You could grant some or all. But for that particular one, in order to be in conformance with the zoning ordinance, you'd have to bring it down from 1680 to 1578.
I have a question. If this was already zoned rural, would we still have all of these variances in front of us tonight?
Yes, except for the use variance.
Except for the use variance, okay. So all of the developmental standards would still have to come before us.
Correct.
All right. All right, anybody else have any questions?
Adam, does the placement of the barn impact, is that in the proposed South Madison right of way at all? Would there be something that would
No.
come into conflict?
No, it is not.
And is there a reason, and again, this may need to be addressed to the participant, but is there a reason that we're going after no paved drive? Is it because we're tying into the existing, I believe there's an existing gravel drive to the house, is that correct?
Correct. Tying into the existing gravel drive.
Okay. Okay, well, is there any other questions for Adam at this point? Okay, we have time for the petitioner to address us. If we'd like to add any additional information than what Adam presented, please just say and spell your name and how you represent the case.
Yeah, my name's Clay Marmion. I own the property. I have the property came with an old barn up front that is just kind of diminished and will possibly have to be demolished at some point in time or taken down. So this is just kind of a replacement. That's why we're putting it in front of the property to be able to use for storage and whatnot. So.
Okay, is the placement of where you're putting this new pole barn metal building, is it close to the dilapidated one?
No,
or
that
one
that
down
one-
or?
that one's right at the pole end. This one would actually be to the north of the property. It would sit, I think, roughly 200 foot off my property line towards Fortville Pike. So it'd probably be about a total of 600 feet away from the actual roadway of Fortville Pike.
Okay. Does anyone else here on the board have any questions for him? Okay, all right, hang on the line there because we may have you come back and answer some follow-up questions.
Okay.
We have time for a public response, again, for or against the project, comments or questions? Either on Zoom or in person? All right, I take that as a no. Time for government officials to have any comment. That's again a no. Moving right along. Do we have any follow-up questions from the petition, for the petitioner? Or clarification questions from Adam? I do have one. Where he is asking to place this, Adam, is this within the setback boundaries? Is there any question on that?
No, it would not be within the setback boundaries.
Okay,
So he'd have to stay 5 feet away from the north side property line because it's an accessory structure. And so he's
Okay.
not seeking a variance on that.
okay, all right. All right, well, I'm not sure if the board wants to do this all in one lump like we did the last one, or if you want to break this into, I'm looking for a motion for the use. The use variance and then the developmental standards with or without conditions.
I'll move to approve both the use variance and the development standards variance as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulations. You got it all. Okay, give us a minute here to fill out our paperwork. Actually, all right, well, that's the last case for this evening. Thank you all for coming. The last one of the year. Hopefully some of you will come back and just sit in on some of them for next year. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Move for adjournment.
All right, do I have a second? Any, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Alex.
Have a good night. Happy New Year.